Good morning, and thank you for joining this webinar from TENS, the Episcopal Network for Stewardship. Today, we're going to be talking about breaking through the pledge plateau. My name is Davey Gerhardt, and I'm the Executive Director. I'm joining you from my living room in San Francisco, California. Today, we've got folks on from all over North America, which is very exciting. From the Diocese of Ottawa in the Anglican Church of Canada on down to the Diocese of the Rio Grande, from Southeast Florida, Miami, to Alaska and Hawaii and Olympia. So congratulations for being here. And we've got folks from everywhere. So we're covering coast to coast and north to south. I'm really pleased that so many folks are on today's call. Thank you so much. This is our last webinar of the year. And so thank you for those of you who have been joining us throughout the year. We'll be releasing our new webinar calendar around Advent, and it'll have all of next year's webinars, and you'll be able to sign up for that. We'll announce that through our mailing list on our newsletter. And so if you aren't signed up for that, please make sure that you do get signed up for it. And I will put a link in the materials that I send to get you all on the mailing list. And that's what we do. We send one email a month letting you know what upcoming trainings are and some helpful things. Let's tuck into today's content. I want to start by saying that if your pledges have plateaued, if you're receiving the same gift from the same folks year after year, that's great. That's wonderful generosity and it's stability. There's a lot to be said for that. But it's not what we need in our churches. We need people to rethink their gifts from time to time, adjust them as their household income has changed, and as the needs of the community have changed. Our pledges at the end of the day should be a response to the mission and the needs of the church. And so if you have folks who've been giving the same gift for a decade, now you just hit renew every year or say, put me down for last year's gift, we do appreciate that. But I want to suggest today that what we need are some tips to help people grow through that giving journey and adjust their giving as their household changes, as their needs change. I also want to say right up front that that doesn't imply that everybody has to grow their giving every year. We know that that's just not possible. Life happens, income changes. When we move from income earning to our retirement assets, sometimes we have to make changes in the kinds of support that we can give. All of those things are understandable. But what I want us to go over here are some tips to help people really understand why they're making the gift they are, how they can plug in more deeply to their congregation, and how they can expand their time, talent, and treasure and what they are willing to share with the church. So let's talk about some of those things today. We're going to start by talking about how we analyze trends in giving. This is a little bit for those folks who like some data analytics, looking at trends in your pledge history. It's important to know where your congregation is headed. If it's going down, what sort of intervening steps you might need. If it's going up, what things people are responding to. So do more of that. So let's look at how we analyze trends in our stewardship. We're going to talk a lot about mission, because it's my belief that when people understand the mission and ministry of your congregation, that they want to support it, that they will support it. And so if we are giving them messages all the time about what we're doing in the world and how they can be a part of it, they're going to hear those messages and they're going to adjust the ways they can contribute appropriately. Of course, every campaign needs leaders, and our stewardship efforts, our fundraising efforts in church need people who are passionate about it. Now, we did a webinar earlier that deep dove on how we recruit and identify and train leaders in stewardship. So I'm not going to redo that entire webinar, but I'm going to give some highlights of it today for those who might have missed that information before, because it's really important for us to be able to identify good leaders for stewardship. It's an important ministry in our church. And so we want to make sure that we're recruiting leaders who really get the message and who can help us. Impact is one of the most important ways that we motivate people to give. It's because when they see that their gift is changing the world, when they see that their gift has impact in the community, it makes them feel important. It makes them feel relevant. It makes them feel responsive. And so we want people to understand that what they are doing is really changing things and improving their community. That's an internal community and an external community. We'll talk more about that as we move through today. And finally, we're going to talk about what changes we might need to make in how we ask for money, how we approach our campaigns, how we approach fundraising, and making certain that we are maximizing the opportunities that people have to make gifts through annual gifts, through planned gifts, from stocks, securities, and retirement accounts. How do we maximize the ways that people can give? So the more opportunities they have, the more generosity we might be able to unlock. That's a lot to go over. So we're going to get started. A lot of my teaching today comes from an experience that I've had of working in nonprofit fundraising for the last 30 years. And one of the things that nonprofits are really good at is developing ways to increase their giving and reach their donors. Now, we call donors members. They're a part of our congregation. They're family to us. But some of the lessons that nonprofits have been teaching us over the past decades are lessons that the church might learn from and professionalize or sharpen some of our tools for how we can raise money in our faith-based ministries. So donor relations is a big category of how we make certain that we're staying in real close community with the people who are our members and making certain that they know what their gifts are doing. So our members have many motivations, and we can't just base our the assumptions that on older models that they will support church because it's church, that they'll say yes because the institution asked them to. Those are models that have worked for many generations, and as our millennials and our Gen Z are coming into their own giving, they're telling us that that message, they're not hearing it the same way that their parents and grandparents heard it. So rather than forcing them to change, we might need to make some adoptions and adaptions as well. People still do give out of a sense of duty, but we want people to give because they feel impact and belonging. And in fact, duty is one of those manipulative things that we've heard in pledge campaigns that make us feel a little creepy. We don't want to feel that it's an obligation. We want to feel that it's an opportunity. Finally, it's responsible and ethical in our congregations, in our leadership, to take a look at what's happening in our giving, to not take it for granted, to not let it coast by. And I know that it's a hard topic, and it's a topic that a lot of our clergy don't have full equipment to deal with because they haven't been taught it in seminary. They might not think that way. They have the heart of a priest, and so they're thinking about other things. But we need to help our leadership know what's going on in our congregation because our churches need funds to continue their ministry. So when we take a look at donor trends, we really should be able to have some kind of a tracking system, whether it's an Excel spreadsheet that is updated or a Google Doc. Now you can put it into a Google Sheet so that multiple people have access to it, or whether it's a database that your church is invested in, or even old school note cards. Whatever it is that is your way of tracking who your donors are and what they're doing, over time is really important, and you should be able to track it and report on it. So when your finance team or your clergy ask for a list of what our gifts are, and different communities have different ways they want to report on that. Some include names, some don't, some include amounts, some include ranges. However you do it in your community that meets your community standards is important. But what we really need to get out there is that you need a system on which you can look at your donor history and your pledges over time and see what people are doing. I like to say 3 years is good. If you can do 5 or 7, it's even better. And I realize that giving this information in 2023 means that when we're looking at a 3-year trend, we're looking at those weird pandemic years as well. And so we might need to adjust some expectations. But this is information for now and into the future. So be thinking about this as we take a look at donor trends. Nonprofits talk about something called moves management. Moves management or donor relations is a way that we track individuals through their journey of giving, from the first or smallest gift that they make up until they're more mature in their relationship with the organization and are making more robust gifts to support the ministry. We want to take a look at an individual's journey. And so stewardship folks and vestries and finance folks sometimes want to go very granular. Take a look at Davy's history over the past 5 years at church. He's giving this, and then the next year he's giving that. Well, why did he change? So it asks the question, well, why? What influenced? Did he get a new job and he's making more money? Is it because his kids are now a part of the program and he really believes in it more or buys into it more? Is it because he's having a conversion experience and just understanding more? What's happening? And so asking those questions, it might seem very invasive, and but what it does is give us information about the pastoral life of the people who make up our donor base, our membership. And so we want to ask those questions when we notice that people are changing their giving in up or down. We want to make sure that we know why. This is a hard thing for us because it feels like we're crossing boundaries, but really it's just seeking information. Do you like the preaching more than you used to? Or do you believe more in the mission? Or is what we're doing in the community something that you want to support more of? Is that why you're increasing your giving? Knowing that helps us do more of it and helps us understand where our people are coming from. Moves management looks at someone's affinity, their access, and their ability. So that means how much do they love what we're doing? That's affinity. Access is how close are they? So is it a one-on-one conversation that I can have? Or do I need to say, I don't really know that person well. Maybe I need to involve another person in asking them for their gift this year, because maybe that person will have a better relationship with them. We don't all have very deep relationships with every member in our congregation because that's impossible. We're humans. So knowing when to involve another person or find another way to access a member is really important. And finally, of course, ability. Now, our members don't tell us, hey, I just got a big promotion, or I just paid off my mortgage and I have all this new income. They don't tell us those things, but we can notice it in their lives. We can ask questions about what's going on and help that information make their giving more responsive to where they come in to their lives, where they are in their lives. Again, these are lessons that our nonprofit sisters and brothers are teaching us about how we take a look at individuals and their journey through giving. This might feel a little overwhelming to us who manage pledge campaigns, and we do the best we can just to get out some letters and pledge cards and keep track of them. But it doesn't take as much work as you might think it does to do a little analysis on folks and see why people are trending the way they are. I want to introduce a couple of tools that might help you when you're talking about ways to analyze your giving. And you've probably all seen this or some version of this before at stewardship time. The steps document is one of these tools that we use to see how our gifts are distributed over the whole life of the church. And it's easy then for us to see when you show this to a person, or maybe you look at it yourself, you find your own gift first, right? You're like, where am I in this step? And then it asks the question, well, there are 12 other people who are giving at my level. What would it be like to increase, to step up a level? Look at what that would do for the church, because when we look at how that math works and how those gifts shake out, we understand that middle section where most of our giving falls, when people make a step up, it really increases the amount of money available in our stewardship campaigns. And so sometimes we use this as a challenge. Can you take a step up? Sometimes we just use it as an analysis. Are you giving at the place where most of the members around you are giving? And if you're not, if you're at an extreme, what does that look like? It also shows us, and this could be good information, this could be scary information. It shows us how vulnerable we are with those highest level gifts. When we're relying on a few really high gifts at the top, which make an enormous impact on the pledge income in our congregations, it shows we really have to be thinking about who those 3 people in this hypothetical example, who the 3 people are who are giving 20,000 or more to our congregation annually. I would want to know who they are and what's going on with them. Are they very old? In which case we should be talking with them about planned giving, because at some point they might not be able to make that gift. I would be really worried about that. Do they not come very often? Maybe they come in at ski season and leave again for the rest of the year, and they make this one gift. How do you deepen your relationship with them to make sure that that gift continues? Because you're building your budget now off of some of these really high gifts. So we want to make sure that that they're continued, or that we have a plan for people who are in that middle zone to move up into the higher zones of giving, because we rely on that. So it's math here, right? We're going to need the money one way or another, whether it's coming from more smaller gifts or a few larger gifts. We just need to understand our own church. If you are in a place where people are changing their lifestyles, where things are happening, you have a generational shift happening in your church, you need to know that, because it impacts where people are giving. If they're right in the middle of their family raising years, they may have less money to give to the church than people who are recent empty nesters. So know where your people are in their life and place them on this step. We have a document that I'll put into into the materials I send you that gives you a template for this tool and the other tools that we have. So you can, you don't have to duplicate them again. You can use our template and use it for your own congregation. Proportional giving is another tool that we use to help people identify how an incremental change in giving can really impact the church finances, but also their own finances. So it's really important for us to be able to say, what does it look like if you're giving 1% or 3% or 5% of your income to the congregation? what does that look like weekly? You can do the math annually or monthly, however you make your giving. What's important here is that it's asking a question. Will you dedicate a percentage amount of your giving or of your income to the church? This is a different model than saying, will you make a gift of $2,500? It's saying instead, will you give 3% of your salary or your income to the church? And then when your salary changes, either anyway, you're making a proportional decision. Proportional giving is about the first fruits. It's about that idea that we have that we take something that's been given to us through blessing and through hard work, and we dedicate it right up front to the church. And I know that we talk about the tithe as one of those places where we'd like people to end up. 10% is a beautiful number. It's not everybody's journey. So this asks you what your journey is and where you might find your giving. And when we ask people to make proportional gifts, we find that they develop a truly beautiful, rich relationship with their giving in church, because it becomes that setting aside, and it becomes a conversation that households have together. How important is our church that we might want to dedicate this amount of money? It changes it from a conversation about the amount to the proportion, and it changes it from something that's transactional to something that's transformational. And that's what we want, that conversion in our members, where they become family, where they become true patrons of the work that we do. Here's another tool that we can use. And this is a little bit for those people who really like math and want to talk a little bit about averages and means and median gifts. What we learn, and I borrowed this from a friend of mine who's the rector at this church in Arizona. This is his giving data for the year 2021, and he's allowed us to use this for our example. So here's what happened in his church. 110 households gave a total of $255,000. And you see what the average gift size is right there, about 2,300. And you see what the median gift size is. So that's the gift that's right in the middle of everything. It's different from average. If you remember math class, that's where we get that. So let's take a look when we put those into a pyramid. And this is a visual tool where people can then say, how much of our church income relies on our top gifts versus our base gifts, and where do people fall in that? And this is really important for us to see, because when we take a look at it, we see how much those high-level gifts contribute to our budget. Here's the same chart with the numbers put into it. So for this congregation, their top 20% are giving an enormous percentage of their budget. And then you see where the next 30% of the gifts and the base 50% of their giving falls out. So this tells us, no surprise, that this church's income is coming a lot from its highest donors, and that base is really important. That base needs to make those gifts every year, and they are people that we should be talking to about moving up into that green middle trend, and talking to those green middle trends about moving up towards pink. How can we help you in your journey? So here's what that looks like in terms of average and median gift size for this congregation. Notice what happens when we track median versus average. I think that average gifts are very helpful in some way, that they give us a general number to start from. But that middle gift, that median gift, gives us sometimes a more accurate snapshot about where people are and what gifts are really being made. Because in a range, you don't always know what that middle is. The median, and then tracking it really helps us see what that middle gift is. That middle gift is the person who's Joe normal or Jill average, right? That person who's right there in the center of their giving. That's a tool that we want to share with you, and that's also in the list of things that we'll send out. So let's move on a little and deepen that relationship from analyzing people and their gifts into taking a look at their heart and soul and where they're at in their journey. Because what one of the big differences that church has with nonprofits from nonprofits is that we're in the business of human development. We talk about people's relationship very sincerely, and we mold their experience of church around the values of the gospel and how they live in community with each other. And that's about their pastoral relationship. So sometimes when we're just looking at numbers and people, we have to look a little deeper about what's going on in their lives. The numbers tell us a story, they don't tell the whole story. So let's make certain that prayer is at the center of our donor analysis. So when I am thinking about asking someone for a gift and I'm looking at their donor history, I sit in prayer with that person's name, with their family, with their idea. I visualize them, and I bring that to God in prayer, and I think about that deeply before I do anything else. I check in with my clergy. So before I ask Davy for his gift, is there any reason I shouldn't? Is there anything going on? Don't tell me any details, but is there anything I should know about before I go and have a conversation with Davy about making his gift this year to the church? So that's really important because what we don't want is to make an inappropriate solicitation. We don't want to make a gift ask of someone who's incapable or not ready or should be put on a different timeline. We also want to take a look at how are they doing with their current pledge. So if your treasurer isn't sending out regular pledge reconciliation or pledge statements, that's really important. We should check in before we ask for the next gift. How do they do with the last gift they made? Did they make it? Did they fulfill it? Are they slow on it? That gives us data about where they're at with the next ask that we make. And it's weird in the way we do stewardship in the church. It often happens in the fall. People might still have 2 months or more to go on their pledges when we're asking them to renew for the next year. And so we don't have a complete picture. Often our treasurers are volunteer folks, and so they might be looking at data that's a month or more old because things take time. So we don't always have snapshot information, but we do the best that we can. And we ask people to start thinking about next year's gift before they finished paying off this year's gift. I just need to be aware of that. Some people get really, they feel really weird about that. I haven't finished. Why are you asking me for next year's gift? And we have to say things like we're trying to build our budget and we'd like to know what our commitments are. But we should know who those people are that are touchy about that and meet them where they are. We shouldn't force them to adopt our strategy. We should listen to where they are at and take their gift when they're willing to accept it or give it. One of the things we also need to know, and this impacts pledge plateaus most truly, I think, in church, is that donor fatigue is real. Donor fatigue is a desensitization to the mission and the ministry of your church because nothing has changed. It's the same thing year after year. They've been on this cycle before, and so they're feeling fatigued. They're feeling like they've heard all the messages. They're just making last year's gift. And it's sort of the equivalent of people saying, okay, don't ask me anymore. I'm just gonna do this. And it's very transactional, it's very duty, it's not very, mission oriented. Now, this isn't to say that these gifts are bad. No gift to the church is unwelcome. Of course, we want people to be able to make gifts that mean something to them. But we need to acknowledge that if we haven't changed our messages in a while, we haven't changed our approach in a while, that it might be feeling old or stale to the people who we're asking to respond to our messages. So think about donor fatigue. If people are in their best income generating years and they're making a gift that's from last year or the last 5 years and it hasn't changed, they are expressing some donor fatigue. And we should take a look at that. We should say, what can we do to inspire you more, to change your relationship with your own gift, and to impact ministry? And so that's what we're going to talk about as we move deeper into this conversation. The first way is make certain that everybody knows what your mission is. I like to say that people should believe and know that every dollar raised in church is for mission. It goes to mission. When we talk about keeping the lights on, the salaries paid, propping up our aging buildings, yes, those things are all true, but they're not what makes people feel excited about the mission. We need people to know that their church matters and means something in the community. So, does everybody know what your mission is? Do you have a tagline or a statement? And has that been reviewed and thought about every once in a while? So your vestry should go away every once in a while on a retreat and come up with new language, new ideas, new approaches, and bring that back into the congregation and integrate it. So know what your mission is, and everybody should be able to state it. When you ask them, what's the mission of your church? They should be able to say something. So if they're not able to say something, if you're not able to say what the mission of your church is, we need to do more education about that and make certain people know why we exist. It's not just to keep the lights on and the bills paid. We exist to do some work in the world. What is that work that you're doing, that your church is called to, that your members can really get behind and support? Everyone in your congregation should know this. Your mission should focus on impact. It should be local. I know that many of our congregations think globally. They might support some projects abroad or parts of the Anglican Communion or send teams to different parts of the world, and that's great. And we also need to remember that we have neighbors that are close by too. So our mission should have something local to it. It should be inspiring and aspirational. Our mission should really make us feel excited about why our church is there, what we're doing when we gather on a Sunday. We want to feel that joy. Your mission should be inclusive. So how are we looking at diversity? How are we looking at making certain that everyone is getting a message that responds and reacts to our gospel message of loving our neighbor and seeking and serving? Your mission should be easily articulated. If it takes someone several paragraphs to describe what your mission is, that's great for an essay or for a long letter in your newsletter, but it's not so good for being able to have conversation with each other, dialogue. So make certain that your mission is easily articulated. What is it? Snapshot or that elevator pitch idea. And make certain that your mission is teachable. So this is reinforced in your godly play, in your adult education, in your sermons, in your announcements, in your approach to the world. As many times as you can get messages out about your mission, you should be teaching them. You should be teaching your mission so that people can identify it, respond to it, and tell others about it. If they can't tell others about it, if they don't understand it themselves, they can't tell other people about it. And we need to make that, we need to facilitate that so people can have it, be ready for it. Finally, your mission should change over time. Now, I'm not talking about the basic mission of like seeking and serving Christ in all people. That's a timeless message. But your neighborhood changes. Over time, people move in and move out, and the community changes, demographics change. And that means that your neighborhood might need things today that it didn't need before, and might need things tomorrow that you're not doing yet. So I like to recommend that every few years you send people out 2 by 2, like the good apostles and disciples that they are, and have them walk or drive around your neighborhood or your town and see who's there. What ages are they? Are there a lot of what services are needed? What other nonprofits are there? What are other churches doing? Are they all doing food programs? Are they all doing daycare programs? Are they all doing senior outreach? Is there a mix of all of that? It helps you identify what your church could or needs to be doing. Sometimes we have those beautiful ministries that are, I call them legacy ministries. We supported them because we support them today because they were really important to us at one point, but maybe that need has changed. If we have a really strong youth program, but there are no more families in our congregation because our demographic has changed and we haven't yet recruited new families, then we need to pivot. We need to think about where we are putting our resources. We can't just keep hearkening back. We must think forward. And this is really important for church that likes to think about what's happened before, but doesn't always look ahead to what's coming. In that, you should also be responsive to your neighborhood. What changes are on the horizon? If you're not plugged into your city government, your school board, things like that, where you're hearing conversations about things that are happening, you should be sending folks out to those meetings. Who's going to do the school board this month? Just sit in the back and listen. Who wants to go to that open hearing at City Hall about this change that's happening in our neighborhood? Go and represent the church and bring that information back to the vestry and tell us about what's coming, what's happening. It's extra work, but really helpful in helping us identify what our mission is going to be. When your members know the mission, they can tell others about it, get behind it, pray about it, and desire it for the world. They can advocate for it in church, in civic, in business, in family, in their lives. They can be representing that message and repeating it. And they can also find ways that they want to influence it and support it. So make certain that people know that their ideas are welcome, that their gifts are welcome, that those are transformative things. So we should always ask our people, our members, do you like the direction we're going? What do you want to see? What aren't we doing? Some good appreciative inquiry, open questions that help us say, where should we be putting our energy and our ideas and our focus? And let people give those great ideas and see if they might want to support them. When we're all pulling in the same direction, our churches will be more successful because they will be more integrated, they'll be more aligned, and they'll be focused on that mission. Don't assume that your members know what's going on at home. We have vestry meetings every month. We publish those minutes. Do people read them? Are they posted somewhere? Do people know that they can come to your vestry meeting? Do they know, is there any report out back to your congregation in a newsletter or an announcement? Last week, the vestry met and we talked about these things and We made these decisions. How do people know what you're facing if you're not telling them? Do you have long-term plans? Is there a big capital campaign that you're going to do someday soon? Or do you want to be thinking about how you build a children's ministry and the steps you might need to take? If everybody knows that that's the direction you're headed, they can help bring it to fulfillment. They can't if they don't know what that long-term plan is. And we should never assume that they know. Maybe we announced it on a particular Sunday, but not everybody was there. Maybe it went out 5 times in the newsletter, but it's that 6th time that people will actually read it and hear it. We need to keep those messages current. Just because we announced it last week doesn't mean we shouldn't announce it again in a few weeks. Keep it going because people need to hear what's happening and what the plans are. Teach always, preach always about your mission. This is so important that we take the gospel and we make it relevant to what's happening in our community. I love deeply theological sermons. There's a place for them. There's also a need sometimes to turn that right into a conversation about our neighbors and our community and make certain that people are making that connection. Invite a deacon to preach every once in a while and help them make that connection between the outside and the inside. Invite those deacons or deacon-like people in your congregation to give sermons every once in a while. And communicate all the time. If you're not doing a weekly newsletter or some kind of post that people can read and hear and learn, you're missing an opportunity to communicate about your mission. You can't just rely on announcements from the chancel steps because people don't always get those. They're in church, they might be in another space in their head. They might not be hearing about next week's potluck or how to plug into this or who they should call for that. Put that information in a written way as well, so that they can have that and think about it when they're back in their analytical mind and not in their spiritual mind. This is a really important thing. And I hear it all the time, but we announced it in church. Yeah, but you were also asking people to be preparing themselves to receive the body and blood of Christ. So maybe that's what they were focused on during announcement time. It's hard to always make that shift. So make sure that we tell people lots of ways that they can get involved and in many different ways. Our leadership is really important. Are your leaders helping you? Are they inspiring you? Are they pushing you? I know in church, we are so reliant on our volunteers, and sometimes we coddle them. We should always appreciate them. We should always lift them up, but we should also respect that they really want to do what they're doing. They are signing up and showing up and rolling up their sleeves because they care. So we can say, how would you like to do more? Would you like to get involved this way? And let them tell you no if they don't want to do it. But let's not, so ask lots of our people. That's what I'm trying to say. Ask it of them and someone will step up and be able to do that. It's really important. When we don't ask people because we feel like, oh my gosh, they're so busy, they're overburdened as it is, I couldn't possibly ask more of them. Well, then what's missing? If they're not being asked, they're not being given the opportunity. Also, focus on pledges. Maybe if you're not focusing on generosity, but you're focusing on pledges, that's what I'm trying to say in that last bullet point. If you're focused on how much we're raising, but not on how generous people are, how grateful they are, how appreciative you are of them. If you're just looking at numbers and not stories, you're missing out on a chance for leadership. Your stewardship team is there to raise money, but they're also there to inspire your congregation. I like to think of our stewardship team as cheerleaders or ambassadors, people who are really plugged into the mission and want everyone to know about it because of their infectious, loving joy that they bring to it. So we're encouraging people when we're in stewardship to share their gifts, to deepen their formation, to pray about their giving, to inspire generosity and gratitude. When our leaders lead from that place, we are in alignment across all of our different ministry areas. And I think that this is another really important thing to do. Often our finance team meets once a month or whatever, and they're not talking except to the vestry to whom they must speak. They're not talking to other communities, or our youth, the people who are signing up to be on the youth committee or the family committee aren't always checking in with the other groups to see how can we align our messaging. Everybody forgets that the Altar Guild is there all the time and they have really great ideas and they can help you liturgically implement the beautiful ideas that are happening in other program areas. So be aware that we need to cross our community together so that they can align on our messages and bring them to fulfillment. So this is a really big deal. I think we should bring in our mission and our fundraising to all different areas. That's not to say that you should have your Sunday school teachers teaching about stewardship all the time, but what they should be able to do is talk about recognition of talents and how we're appreciative of gifts and how things come together, how we are grateful for all that we've been given. When we encourage those messages and align our messaging, we are helping our community stay whole. Your leaders should be your givers. This is a really important thing that I want to make certain that we know. Your leadership should have 100% participation in your campaign. I say that and you're nodding your heads, of course they should, but it's so true. And it's sometimes a thing that gets missed and it's noticed when it's missing. So if you have members of your stewardship committee, your vestry, your finance team, your clergy who aren't making gifts every year, you are sending the message that some people can skate by, that not every gift is needed, that some people don't have to give, and that's just not true. We need 100% participation at some level. We need your participation. Your vestry, your clergy, your stewardship committee, your finance team, they should actually make their gifts before the campaign starts. I like to start on kickoff Sunday saying, we already have 100% commitment from our vestry and our team. Everybody is pulling the same direction. We've already raised this much money. Now it's time for us to finish the campaign with your gifts. Some of that's already been done. And in fact, 100% of our leadership is online. Your vestry should also show up, and you should show up as stewardship committee members at the other things you're doing. At a volunteer day, at a food pantry day, at a Bible study. You don't have to go to every event, but someone should be going to at least something every time something's offered. Some part of your leadership should be going so that they can hear what's going on, share messages across different communities, and bring that back into your leadership circle. According to the recently retired Bishop of Nevada, my good friend Dan Edwards, your stewardship committee should be engaged early in the year so they can help your congregation do the work of ministry year-round. They'll raise more money when they have more time to think about it and when they're mission focused. They will be that ambassador for your programs across your church. This is really important. And they will deepen their relationships with each other and find spiritually grateful, generous lives in each other and inspire that for your church. These are all tools that we need to develop in order to break through that plateau and really inspire next level beautiful giving in your congregation. Recruit those people who are well connected in your church and diversify your team across the number of services you have, representing the populations that you have. Make certain that your committees and your leadership look like and are a part of the communities of your members and your membership. It's really important that people know the impact of their giving. Oh, wait, I've got a question here from Leslie. Regarding the Easter deadline for stewardship committees, what about year-round stewardship plans? I'll talk about year-round stewardship a little later in this session, and I love that question and idea. So I will talk about it in a minute. It comes up later. If it doesn't come up, hit me again with that question because I want to answer it. Thank you. So I want to talk a little bit about people making investment and seeing impact. Those are words that we don't always use in church. They feel very businessy, but we are asking our members to make investments in us. That's to say they're giving their wealth, their works, and their wisdom to the church to use and share and multiply and grow and deepen. And so we need to help them understand that their gifts are being used for what we say they're being used for, and track back to them with what has been done and accomplished. Nonprofits have taught us this over and over again, that we need to tell people what our services are doing in order for people to be inspired to give again. And it's the same way in church. It is wonderful to have a food program and to tell people about that. It is even better when we can say, this is how many meals we serve, or this is how many people come through our program. When we give metrics, it helps us scale that impact. Oh, wow, 1,500 people use our food service every year. That's a lot of people who are being fed by our church and our community. And that starts to feel really good. As opposed to saying, well, we are there every week and we give food out. That's nice to know. I'm proud of that. But I'm so much more engaged when you tell me how my gift has made a difference and how much of a difference it's made in the community. So measure your impact. You don't, and I want to speak to our congregations here who might not have that marquee ministry, as some people like to call it, that big program that summarizes your church's outreach in the community. Maybe you have multiple small ways that are important ministries that people engage with. And maybe your ministry is your pastoral work and how you care for each other and how you look inward and give each other the support and the love you need. Whatever those gifts are that your members share with the church is what you should be talking about when you're measuring your impact. It's great to have a big program that you can talk about and that the diocese loves and people like to talk about it. But every ministry that your church engages with is important and has impact and should be measured. So talk about those other things. Are your Sunday school programs growing? Do you have small groups that are meeting? Do you partner with other nonprofits or 12-step support groups? Do you have great deep ties in the community? And how many people, how many individuals volunteer in your church every year? That's a really important metric. And there should be at least one Sunday or over over the course of the year in which you are talking about how many people it takes to get things done in your church. This is so important because it helps us say, well, if I'm not one of those people that is showing up to move tables or is there to contribute my ideas or whatever, maybe I should be. Maybe there are ways I can plug in. Not everybody can do everything, but we want to give opportunity for everyone to share their talents with the church. So there's a committee for you, or there's a ministry for you, there's a small group for you. And if there isn't, create it. I often get questions about, well, I really wish we had a book group that read science fiction. Okay, why don't you call it together? And we'll support you in that. What do you need? Do you need space in the newsletter to talk about it? Do you need space in the church to meet? How can we help you enact your dream? And that's great because people will be really excited when they can contribute to your ideas. Evan just asked if it'd be possible to download and print our slides. Yes, I will send you the slides. You can download them, share them, print them, share them with the world. We want everyone to know. Other ways you can measure impact: attendance, of course, but not just your average Sunday attendance. What are people really showing up to? Look at those numbers. How many people are volunteering? How many people are participating in your mission-based programs and that work you're doing in the community? How many people are showing up online? So we're now out of the pandemic, but many congregations still have virtual components to them. Count those people. If they're showing up to church on Sunday virtually, if they're participating in small groups virtually, they count. So make sure that their voices are heard, their numbers are counted, that they're acknowledged. Since 2020, there are at least a few members of my church that have not been back, but they are showing up online and they are making gifts and they're showing up to, like, weekday Bible studies virtually. Some people love the virtual world. Now that we've opened it up to church, keep making it possible as long as you can, as long as you have people and technology to do that. We should always measure how many people are making gifts. And so again, that's about participation. We report on the number. We should also report on the number of gifts, and we should track that as a percentage of the number of people in our church or the number of households, however you track that. So make sure that people know, okay, 80% of the people who claim to be members here made gifts this year. Can we make that 85% next year? What can we do to have more people participating at some level? I want to be clear that you should also track in some way people who also pledge their talent and their time. If you download this year's tool or pledge campaign from TENS, you'll see that our Rooted in Abundance pledge cards on the other side have a time and a talent section as well. So we're not just asking for your treasure, we're asking for people to say, what ministries are you involved in? What would you like more information about? How can you plug in and get more information if you want it? So make sure people have a way to pledge their time and their talent to you as well, because we do ask for that in our stewardship. It's not just about money. It's about all the ways that we contribute our wealth and our works and our wisdom. Here are the top 7 reasons from the donor platform Tithely that church members do not make inspired or best gifts. And what I say by that, so that's a judgment, right? Are they making their best gift? Some people are making last year's gift, last decade's gift. They're not really thinking about it each year. They're making it out of duty or obligation. So I consider that a gift that's meaningful because the church needs it, but not inspirational, because maybe they should be thinking about it. And if they arrive at the same conclusion, I'm gonna give this because I've discerned it, that's fine, but we should know that they're going through a process. So reasons members give uninspired gifts, nobody personally reached out to them. If you're only doing letters and making general announcements to everyone, pick up your pledge forms, folks, send them in. Here's an email that's going out, and you're not doing any kind of personal outreach. I like to say a general ask yields a general response. So when you're not specific, and that specificity can be in the stewardship letter that people get. It can be an email or a letter. Dear Davy, I'm inviting you to join me in making your gift this year. This is why it's important. This is what we're doing. This is what you gave last year. Will you make a gift this year? So even if it's just as personal as that, and you're not able to schedule a phone call or coffee or whatever, make certain that there's a personal touch to your fundraising. It makes a big difference. If you're sending out last year's material and you've just changed the date on it, or you're using last year's theme, or the same approach, you are not inspiring people. It is not helping people feel that it is urgent or current, or like you're spending any time asking any more of them. Why should they give more if you're not spending time to ask more of them? The fourth one is a little bit depressing sometimes. It's because donors might say, well, there's nothing new going on here. There's no reason to increase because we have the same number of staff doing the same jobs, we're here, it's the same as it was last year. And if they really believe that it's the same as it was last year, then what message are they not getting about what we're doing in the world, right? So we need to do a better job to make sure that they feel that there is always something new to report. There are people that are here that weren't last year, ministries that we're doing that weren't here, and we're not talking about them in the right way. So if people feel that there's nothing new, we need to be telling them that there is, because there's always something new in church, always something to talk about. Some people feel that the church isn't growing, and so they're not going to make a gift if it's not growing. This is a really bad attitude. It's very transactional, right? I want to see something in the church and I'm going to hold back my giving if I don't see it there. Well, that's really hard. And so we need to challenge people to say, if you see fewer people here in the pews because because changes, whatever, then that's not an invitation to step back. That should be an inspiration to lean in and give more and think about how we get more people in here, how your gift matters. So if people are only giving when church feels full and exciting and good, then they're missing out on the need for church and what we can be doing for each other. If the community is changing, oh, well, there used to be a lot of youth here and there aren't anymore. And so that's what I really like. Like, well, what are you doing to bring more youth in? Or would you like to do some things to inspire youth? Who are you inviting to church? How are you engaging that question? Rather than holding or stifling your giving, what could you do to say, hey, you guys need to really beef up your children's program. I want to support you with some new ideas, and we're going to give you the money that you need to hire that youth director, to get out there and serve more people, to find where the kids are and bring them into church, to engage the next generation. So community is changing is a reason people give. I always turn it back. So how are you going to change the community to see what you want, to be what you want to see? And finally, I think the other problem that people see is when the budget is wonky when they're experiencing some uncertainty in the budget, people stifle or hold back their giving. And I think that that's really important for us to know. It's how we talk about the budget, how we talk about budget uncertainty. When there are changes coming, how do we get in front of that and message about it and help people understand that we don't need them to pull back their giving right now, that we're working on something, that there's a change in the force, but we're really working on it as a vestry, as leadership, and we're soliciting your ideas, not just your donation, but your ideas on how we can get past this, get through it, grow beyond it. So I love that. Finally, let's talk about changing our approach. I want to respond to some questions first. So Deirdre, yes, happy to send out some examples of letters that are personalized. I will send you a template that I use. Again, I know that we need to be cautious about this. In some communities, people have opinions about who should have access to donor information, and we want to engage with each community in the way that their standards are. And so who sends out that letter and how they do it makes a difference, but I will send out an example in the materials that I send you all. So thank you for that. So we need to change our approach to how we do fundraising. And some of that's about our materials. If you haven't seen or downloaded our webinar on making the case and why case statements and support materials are really important, please do, and we'll talk about that. Do your campaign materials tell the story of your congregation? Are they using real stories of real people and your message of impact in your community? Do they give metrics and talk about your mission? We spoke about that earlier, but if you need to change your approach, these are some things you should change. Are you focused on the bills or the budget, or are you focused on the gospel and the mission? People send, and you're welcome to as well, send your stewardship letter. People ask me to red pen it sometimes, and I will turn it back around and say, change this, don't change that. This looks great. I get stewardship letters talking about office supplies. I got one last year about paper clips. I'm like, paper clips? Is this what's inspiring to people? We need to buy paper clips. So remember that words matter. What we put into our materials and our messages, you use paper clips to clip paper together, but not to hang your campaign off of, right? Your campaign is about the mission and what you're doing to change the world. So make sure that goes into your stewardship materials, not, oh, we need to fund the budget. Nobody wants to fund a budget. What they want to do is change the world. So give them ways that their gifts are changing the world. Put that into your messaging. That's what people care about. Testimonials, videos, pictures, so important. I love talking about stewardship, but I love it even more when somebody else is giving their story and their testimony about why they make their gift to church. That inspires me so much more than the person who's paid to talk about stewardship at the front of the church. When members tell their own story, it is so much more compelling. So make sure that your materials and your campaign have some element of testimonial and storytelling to it. Bob asks how we find sample pledge campaign materials. In our resource library, you'll see some sample letters and some tips on how to write good letters in church. And then, of course, if you download our annual pledge campaign materials, you'll see this year's sample letters that are tied to this theme, the Rooted in Abundance theme. Thanks for that question, Bob. Here's another little hot take, a little question, a challenge perhaps. If you can provide a snapshot of your mission and it fits on the front and back of a 3x5 card, this is actual size, 3x5. If you can do all of that on a tiny piece of paper and tell the story, the impact, the mission, and give ways that people can make their gift, you know that you have crafted a mission statement that is succinct, that's teachable, that's repeatable, that's articulated easily, that people can respond to. And this one even has pictures on it. So you're using up some of your precious space with big old pictures, right? So this particular church, they want you to know what they're doing in the community, that they serve, educate, gather, provide, and plant. That's important to them, and that's what they want you to know when you're considering to make a gift to them. And then they tell you on the other side of that card how you can make your gift. This is really important because we don't always remind people. I have seen printed pledge materials and printed campaign brochures. People have printed up 500 of them and done them up, and they haven't put any information on how or where you can make your gift. That's a loss, that's a miss. So make sure that you have somebody edit that, take a look at it before it goes to the printer and before you spend money on it, to make sure that people have a way to respond to it. I love beautiful campaign materials, but if they don't have a way for people to engage, they're missing the call to action, or they're missing the action part of the call. You've made the call, but not given them the action. What do you need in a case statement? Tell people what the need is. We're growing our church for these reasons. We're engaging our community in this ways. We need you to increase your giving because these things are happening and we're responding to them in the community. Tell people what the need is. And if it's an urgent need or a pressing need, tell them why. We need to do it this year because this is happening in our community next year, or we need to prepare for this because of that. Whatever it is, tell that urgency, give that story. When it's about addressing a need in the community, oh, we notice there are a lot of homeless people on our street, or there are a lot of people in wheelchairs that we notice in our community. What are we doing to address those needs, to provide services for people in our community? There's a new senior service center that's just opened a couple of blocks away. Are there any companion ministries that we could have with them? Are there any ways that we could partner with them? So know what's going on in your community and how you're addressing the needs of your changing community. And cast the vision for people. When we make these gifts, when we grow our pledges, when we raise more money, we will be able to do this and that and the other thing. So tell them what's going on and cast the vision for them about how their gift will make that possible, how they will be a part of that realization. Think about whether you want to talk about the negatives. Like, if we don't do this, this might happen. Think about whether that's useful or not. Sometimes it can be motivational, sometimes it can be too heavy and scary. So what you don't want to say is, if we don't raise enough money, we have to fire Davey next year because we won't be able to afford him. That's terrible. It's manipulative. You don't want to do that. So make sure that the negative consequences are like, if we didn't raise enough money, we'd really have to reevaluate that ministry, see what we can do. Cast a vision like that, not one that's like, the guillotine. Don't do that. If you haven't ever considered a narrative budget, it's another beautiful way to cast vision for ministry. And it underscores that direct line that every gift goes to mission. Every gift is ministry. So it spreads your fixed costs, like salaries and building maintenance and utilities and insurance, across your ministry areas. And then it divides up your staff. Maybe you're clergy, you spend 40% of your time on worship and music, and you spend 10% of your time on pastoral ministry and 20% of your time on the youth ministry, whatever. You divide up salaries and equipment and space based on the needs of the community, and you talk about ministry areas. It's the same budget numbers, but you're recasting them in a way that shows that what we do, every dollar we raise, is for mission and ministry in our community. It is not just to pay line items in a budget. Line items are not inspirational. So of course, we need to supply them with a line item budget to show transparency and accountability, but we also need perhaps to do a narrative budget. And TENS has a tool in our resource library, and I'll include it in the email that I send out later, where you can just, it walks you step by step on how you turn that budget document into a narrative budget. I want to end before I take your questions and open it up again to the theme that we're doing for this year, which is called Rooted in Abundance. And we want really to make certain that everybody understands that giving and church is hospitality, is invitation, that we have been given so much that our response to that is in gratitude, to give back, to change the world, to participate in our community. And so our theme hangs on the image in Jeremiah's prophecy about a tree planted by water that sends its roots by the stream. It shall not fear when heat comes, and its leaves shall stay green. In the year of the drought, it is not anxious, and it does not cease to bear fruit. When we are rooted in abundance in our church and in our lives and in our giving and in our community of faith, we can weather the storm. We can work together in good times and in bad times. We can yield the fruit that our world needs. So I'm going to open it up to questions now, and thank you for this. We'll send out the slides and the video so that you can download it and share it with other folks. And I want to go back first before I open up to live questions to the question about year-round giving that someone asked earlier. When your stewardship committee meets early in the year and starts to form, one of the things that you can do is begin influencing and leading Christian education and formation in your congregation. Whether that's a between the services chat or a weekday study, formation begins to help us think about year-round ways we can consistently recognize the relationship between gratitude and generosity. So in our website, in our resource library at TENS, you can find Bible studies on any number. We have about 25 different passages that you can use to create a Bible study on themes of generosity and abundance. We have books that you can study and bring into a small group. We have a list of that in our reading library. So those are some tools you can do. We also have a tool to help you create a year-round stewardship awareness campaign. And this comes from our good friends in the Diocese of Olympia. When you go into the resource library, you can download some tools in our year-round giving section. And what this does is it helps you create a calendar throughout the 12 months that reflects the liturgical year of the church, but helps you focus in gratitude on each ministry area, lifting them up, raising awareness, keeping in mind the gifts that people have made to help those happen. And each one of those is an opportunity for people to learn and be inspired by your community. And so those ways of giving year round are really great, being aware of our gifts year round. There are a couple of churches that I know of that do rolling campaigns that don't just do their pledge fundraising in the fall, but do it throughout the year. And it's tied to either somebody's membership date or their birthday month. And people are asked to renew their gift sort of all throughout the year. There are stages of it. I've seen churches do that and call it year-round giving, and it's another good tool. It takes a different kind of coordination. And what it lacks is the intense work of a campaign where the work of fundraising is lifted, but it also then spreads it out every month. So every month you're talking about a group of people who are renewing their gifts. You're giving thanks to them. You're remembering them. You're bringing forward that ministry. That's a great tool. And I know some congregations that do it really well. It's also, it means your committee has to do a lot of work, and you're always on, right? You're always like, whose month is it? And getting letters or materials out, you're crafting that message all the time. It's a beautiful way to do year-round stewardship, and it's different. It's a different kind of work rather than being focused on 6 weeks. It's spread throughout the year. Those are a couple of ideas that we have. We have several resources on our website around year-round giving. So I would love for you to take a look at those. What are some questions that you have? I just got a question in the chat that was sent as a direct message, but I'm going to answer it to the group. Someone asked how we deal with issues of complete salary transparency when utilizing a narrative budget. Transparency is really important. And if people are funding staff positions as members, they need to know what those people, what's going into those gifts. And that's not to create any kind of competition or weirdness, but it's to say this is what our church costs our clergy or our office administrators or our ministry leaders, our professionals. They may have even gone to school and taken on debt to accommodate the career that they have chosen or to which they've been called. And so as people of faith and as people who call leaders and ask them to prepare for their leadership through education and other sacrifices that they might make, we need to fund them accordingly and be living wage, and we have benefits, and there's a pension. We need to talk about those things. And I know because I get the question, I've even heard it in my own church. Well, the priest makes more than I do. That pension plan is really sweet. I'm not getting that. Well, you know what? There are difference. You might be able to have equity in your house and your priest doesn't. Or you might have, you don't have all these student loans because you didn't go to seminary. Like when we try to compare or compete, we're missing the point that we ask people to take the work on of leading church, which is not a well-paid career for most people, and we take care of them the best that we can. So transparency in that, I think, is really important. If your church struggles with transparency, there's other stuff going on, and you need to have some conversations about that openness so that people understand that we're not trying to name, shame, and blame, but what we are trying to do is make certain that the community that is funding ministry understands where its money is going, how it's being spent, and then they can assess. They don't, that's really important for us. We need full information. So I really appreciate that question. And I really think that it's important. When we put when we put a narrative budget together, it needs to also, in the back of in the back of the document needs to be that line item budget so that we can see our clergy, the money from their salary is capped in these different minister areas, but there's some place, some document that tracks the line as well, so that we can help people understand that it's not a shell game. We're not hiding anything from you. We are presenting full information. Transparency is really important. So thank you for that. Mary Jane asks, is the step graphic and proportional giving chart? I will send you a link to that. It's already on our website, but I will send you links so that you have access to those informations. You don't need to recreate them yourself. Someone asked what churches are using to track all this data. Yes. Some people are using websites and donor platforms. So maybe Razor's Edge or Donor Perfect or some sort of constituent record management, CRM, system like Salesforce or Realm or other things that churches use to track pledges. You can track time and talent in those as well if you tweak the fields. But good old Excel works too. And that's another way to track it. When people do it, have a sign up sheet at your events and put that information into a sheet. We had 12 people show up for the workday. Put that in your report and let people know that that's something that people have done. It's really important to be able to track that. I realize I'm at time, but I want to make sure that if there's another question that it gets asked and answered. So if you want to raise your hand, yeah, I see a hand up. Bob, come on off mute.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great, thanks, Davey, and thanks for an incredible presentation. You're obviously very articulate and knowledgeable on this topic, so thank you for that and all you're doing. My question is there a sort of a one-page or very simple summary of an outline or timeline of the annual pledge campaign? I know it would need to be somewhat generic because every church is different, but something that at least provides a roadmap for how to go about this.
Yeah, we have that. It's in our, if you download our campaign materials for this year, one of the items is a timeline, and it tells you it's not tied to dates. It's tied to like 4 weeks before the campaign, you should be doing this, 2 weeks before, and it's structured like that. So I will highlight that for you, Bob, and make sure that you know where to find that. But having a timeline, yeah, we have that. It's really important.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mary Jane asks for the proportional giving graphic. Do you send that out to every pledge member? I do. I think it's really important. It's also one of the things that we include in this year's pledge campaign. There's a card about proportional giving that you can send out with your pledge cards. It's that same chart that I shared with you. It helps people see where their pledge is and how it stacks up and what it would be like. So I recommend it as a tool because you can place yourself in it and see what works. Great. Friends, I know we're at our time and I appreciate the 90 minutes you've spent with us. This is a big topic, but I hope that it's given you some tools to really break through some of those plateaus, to think about how to change up your campaign and focus on mission and ministry. That's what we're here to do. I appreciate all that you give to the church and all that you've given to me today. Thanks for your ideas, your comments, your support. And I really appreciate that. Be on the lookout for materials today or this weekend. And please be on the lookout for our webinar calendar as we release it around Advent for next year. We have a whole new suite of webinars ready to go, and we'll be talking about that soon. Friends, have a beautiful Saturday, and thank you for your ministry.